Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your host, Nelson, here on this Monday afternoon. And this is going to be a little bit, I wouldn't say like that different from what I usually do, but I'm going to try to get everything covered right now, seeing as I won't be available tomorrow. There's an election coming up. It's rather important, and that's the only thing that I'm going to talk about with politics. That's it. All right. So any of you guys that are in the comments right now just begging me to talk politics, that's not going to happen. All right. I'm going to say this right now. If I see even one comment about that, I am not even going to acknowledge it. I kid you not. So we're not doing that. I'm not doing that again. I'm sorry to say this. This is a basketball podcast. All right. This is not a politics podcast. Basketball and politics do not coincide with each other, and I will not have that with my show. All right. So that's not happening. We're not doing that. Okay? So, first segment, we are going to talk about Joel Embiid and an incident regarding a reporter. Yes, Joel Embiid got into another incident. So we're going to go ahead and talk about that in the first segment, as well as give a little bit of an update on Gregg Popovich and his status, because there's something going on with the Spurs, and I just wanted to talk about it for a little bit. I can't really talk about it much because we just simply do not know enough, so I decided to just group it with the first segment. Next, in the second segment, I'm going to talk about Vince Carter getting his jersey retired by the Toronto Raptors, and, the storylines on that, how it went down, everything, and even, a little bit of his career as well. We're going to talk about that in the second segment. Then, in the third segment, we are going to recap all of the games that happened on Friday. There were a lot of them, and see how many predictions I ended up getting right on that day. Of course, I probably missed at least two, but we'll find out. And then in the fourth segment, we're going to go ahead and recap the results of every single NBA game that went down over the weekend. And we have a special fifth segment at the end of the fourth segment as well. So be sure to stay tuned for that if you guys are interested. Before I begin, however, I do like to remind everybody that we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, aside from politics. Whether you guys have a comment, question, hot take, something you've been dying to share, we're all ears. If you really want your comment and or question to get noticed, then I recommend using Super Chat. You just click on the $ below the chat box and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. If Super Chat is not really your thing, then that's totally fine. You can always use the link displayed below the ticker on every show segment, which essentially does the same thing. It'll get your comments recognized, as well as, help the show. GSMCpodcast.net. You can see it pop up below the ticker right now. And with that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about the situation that's going on around the 76ers. So, in layman's terms, Joel Embiid and the 76ers are under investigation, again, regarding Joel Embiid's behavior, again. And this could potentially sideline him for more games, again. So, more or less the exact same thing that we've been doing every single time with Joel Embiid and talking about Joel Embiid. It's really getting repetitive at this point. It's almost as if he wants to do absolutely everything except play basketball. And I genuinely do not understand what on earth is going on. I don't get it. So he was supposed to be, if you guys could remember from the previous segments, he was supposed to be eligible to play against the Detroit Pistons, and that was supposed to be his opening night, but that ended up not happening. And as a result, the Sixers ultimately ended up losing to the Detroit Pistons, giving the Pistons their first win of the season. And this game happened on Wednesday, October 30th, for any of you guys who are curious. Despite this, they were scheduled to play another game against the Grizzlies. I thought that, let me just go ahead and check. Yeah, I thought that Joel Embiid would be eligible for this one, but it turns out he wasn't. And he was not playing against the Memphis Grizzlies going into this game. And he's essentially just leaving Maxey out there. Same with Paul George. They're both leaving Maxey out there to try and fend for himself and try to bring this team back into the hunt, I guess you could say. And I know it's still early in the season, but this is not a very good start for the Pistons. Not the Pistons, the Sixers, excuse me. This is not a good start, at all. Now, in regards to this incident, this happened between Joel Embiid and a reporter. According to these reports, this is there was an apparent locker room altercation between Joel Embiid and this columnist. All right, so I'm not saying that Joel Embiid did this, that, and the other. I wasn't in the locker room. These are just what the reports are saying. So, now. The article starts with, on Saturday, the 76ers, they ended up playing the Grizzlies. They ended up losing 124 to 107 for any of you guys who didn't tune in. And apparently after the game, Joel Embiid allegedly shoved Philadelphia Inquirer reporter Marcus Hayes after a locker room altercation. The two were quickly separated before Embiid left the building, but the incident is already under investigation by the NBA. So for now, as of what we know, there's no easy way to predict what sort of discipline Joel Embiid might end up facing in this season. Like, there's no real altercation like this that happened in the NBA to fall back on and sort of use that as a basis for how you go about in these punishments. So, like, how do I explain this in layman's terms, right? Usually in governments, there are, this isn't really politics, but I know we're talking about it a little bit. But usually in governments, whenever there is a case that determines whether somebody is guilty or not guilty, they usually go back on a case to try and figure out what the sentence would be. This would be a similar thing that the NBA does in regards to handing out its punishments. So depending on what a player does, usually there's been some other player that has done that before. And that way, and the NBA uses that as a basis to sort of guide their actions and to figure out exactly what they should do moving forward with this player. So, like, for example, if a player would bring in a gun to a locker room, Gilbert Arenas, they would use the incident with Gilbert Arenas and they would, try to figure out what's a worthy punishment for that player, given the information that they already know. So, because there has never been something that the NBA could really fall back on, we have no idea what this punishment could be and how long it could be for. And we'll just go ahead and I'll just go ahead and explain what sort of led to this altercation. Because again, NBA players, there's never been an NBA player to allegedly shove a reporter. Like we've heard instances where NBA players are rude or maybe even curse out the reporter. Yes. But outright shoving a reporter and putting his hands on him, that's a completely different story, and one that I'm not entirely sure what the outcome is going to be. So, what led to this argument, or what led to this little confrontation? So before the season began, Embiid told ESPN that he was likely done playing in back-to-backs, and that's what he said in an interview. So, to that point, he had not played a preseason game, and he ultimately missed the entire preseason. He has not yet played for the 76ers at all this season either. And in response to Embiid's absence, Hayes, the reporter that allegedly got assaulted, again, I have no idea what happened, but he got shoved by Joel Embiid, allegedly, he wrote a story for the Inquirer on October 23rd, titled "Joel Embiid Disrespects the Sixers, the Game, Its Greats, and Himself. Shaquille O'Neal and Charles Barkley are right to rip him." Embiid has faced criticism for games he has missed due to injury for practically his entire career from both the Philadelphia media and the wider basketball world. However, this story was notable for bringing up Joel Embiid's family, which I really don't understand what that has to do with Joel Embiid whatsoever. I mean, bring up the player, that's a completely different story, but then bring up his family, that's totally different. That's completely uncalled for in my opinion. But this is a Philadelphia writer, so I'm not really surprised, to say the least. Now, the quote that it was amended, it was edited later, but initially the quote was, "Joel Embiid consistently points to the birth of his son, Arthur, as the major inflection point in his basketball career. He often says that he wants to be great, to leave a legacy for the boy named after his little brother, who tragically died in an automobile accident when Embiid was in his first year as a 76er, Hayes wrote. "Well, in order to be great at your job, you first have to show up for work. Embiid has been great at just the opposite. Now in his 11th season, he has consistently been in poor condition. This poor conditioning apparently seems to have delayed his debut this season. Embiid won't play in Wednesday's opener or the next two games." And little did he find out he wouldn't play in the rest of the games afterwards. Story made minor waves upon publish, but as Embiid was injured at the time, he was not required to speak to the media immediately. And on Friday, November 1st, he addressed reporters for the first time since the Hayes story was published and pushed back on it, saying, "Everybody has been on the same page," Embiid said of the team's return to play and injury management plan for him. "If your body doesn't react well and if your body tells you one thing, sit out. I've done it. From what I can tell you, I've broken my face twice. I came back early, even the risk of losing my vision. I have broken fingers. I still came back. When I see people say he doesn't want to play, I've done way too much for the city, putting myself at risk for people to be saying that." And there's a little bit of an argument of doing a lot for the city that we can get into a completely different time, but more focused on what the article has to say and what happened in the moment. So the most detailed first-hand accounting of the incident came from Kyle Neubeck of Philly Sports. "We go to the locker room," Neubeck began. This is the quote. "Joel is settled in there. Marcus Hayes, who everyone knows was on Joel's radar this week, gave a lengthy quote taking shots at him yesterday. Marcus was present in the locker room, and the second that Joel realized he was there, got into a verbal back and forth. Obviously, we can't repeat many of the words that were said on the show. The basic gist of it was, you can say I suck, you can say whatever you want about me as a player. Don't ever put my dead brother's name in your mouth. Don't talk about my family. Don't bring them into this. You want to talk to me like a man and talk to me about basketball, that's different. But if you ever talk to me about my family again, we're going to have real problems." And he continues saying they go kind of back and forth, and at some point, let's say 90 seconds to 2 minutes into this back and forth, Joel shoves him. Team security steps in, players kind of surround the situation, and everyone kind of dispersed. Late reporting would fill in the blanks on what specifically was said. Most notably, Embiid warned Hayes not to speak about his family again. So essentially, he went all, "Keep my wife's name out your mouth." That's essentially what Joel Embiid just did. And the next time you bring up my dead brother and son again, you are going to see what I'm going to do to you, and I'm going to have to live with the consequences, Embiid reportedly said. Oh, wow, that is a legitimate threat. I smell a big lawsuit coming in. I smell it coming in from this reporter. I mean, he got allegedly assaulted by Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid openly threatens him in front of other people, according to this article. I sense a very big lawsuit, and I don't know, this could spell some really, really bad news for the 76ers, and it might even end their season completely, because given what was being said and given what was done, he might be out indefinitely. Like, maybe for the season, and maybe for the rest of his career. This might be it. I have no idea what exactly the NBA is going to do about that, but this is not good. I mean, I understand the issues with, that man should have never targeted his family whatsoever. But as a player, as an NBA player, and as a professional athlete, you have to learn how to remain professional, and you can't be doing something like this, especially towards a reporter. I'm sorry, but if you're picking on a reporter, at that point, you're like a big fish in a small pond. Like, perspectively speaking, like you're just picking on someone who you clearly outclass, and it's like, that's not only is that unprofessional, but like, is that, he talks about talking like a man, is that really a manly thing to do when you're picking on somebody who's like not even twice your size? Like, be real here. I mean, maybe I'm just hating. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, but I genuinely do not think that is the kind of response that an NBA player should give, and not the kind of action that an NBA player should have towards a reporter, let alone somebody who's like you should be above that. But personally, that's just me. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. And what can we expect on this possible suspension? There's no reason, according to this article, there's no reasonable way to predict what sort of discipline Embiid might face for this. While disagreements between players and reporters are common, there is simply not a known precedent for such a dispute to become physical in the NBA. Historically, the league takes any violence from a player towards a non-player that occurs in an NBA venue very, very seriously. It's just that the non-player in question has never been a reporter. So again, this could spell some really, really bad news for the 76ers moving forward. And this might set them back a very, very long way. Like, this could be bad. So that's it in regards to the Joel Embiid situation. Now, I spent a lot of time talking about it. Thankfully, we don't have much to talk about with Gregg Popovich, so I'll leave it at this. San Antonio assistant coach Mitch Johnson is expected to serve as the interim coach indefinitely while Gregg Popovich is dealing with quote-unquote health issues. So we have no idea what those health issues are, but in regards to Gregg Popovich being incredibly old, I'm sure we all can connect some dots there. And again, like he's 75 years old. I have no idea what is going on with his health. I have no idea if this is going to end up being very, very bad. I hope that 2024 does not mess with Gregg Popovich. That would be a very sad day for a lot of NBA fans, including myself. And that's really the only thing I can tell you about this health issue, because again, we have no idea what this is. Whether it is that the reporters don't know what it is, whether it is that the Spurs neglect to reveal exactly what the issue is, I don't know. But that's all that I can really say on that. So that's it for the first segment. That was a really long first segment, might I say. So let's go ahead and get into this break, and then we'll go ahead and talk about the second segment, which is in regards to Vince Carter getting his jersey retired, and just, you know, a little bit of a story on his career, as well as any other impressive accolades that I can come up with and that I remember when I think about Vince Carter. So I'll be right back after this short break, so be sure to stay tuned.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. Some losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this second segment, we are going to be talking about Vince Carter getting his jersey retired for the Toronto Raptors. Now, before I begin, I do like to remind everybody that we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show. Whether you guys have a hot take, burning question, something that you've just been dying to share, we are all ears. If you really want your comment and or question to get noticed, then I recommend using Super Chat. You just click on the $ below the chat box and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. They really help the show. They make it much more interactive between myself and you guys. Once again, the link is gsmcpodcast.net. If Super Chat's not really your thing. So with that out of the way, let's go right ahead and get into this second segment. It's going to be a little bit of a shorter second segment than most of the other ones, mainly because I want to spend a little bit more time on the recaps of the games that went down over the weekend, as well as the games that went down on Friday. Goodness, my English is just amazing this morning, isn't it? So, as you can see, this beautiful jersey retirement, this beautiful image of Vince Carter, half man, half amazing, Air Canada, whatever you want to call it. Vince Carter's jersey has officially been retired. This happened during a 23-minute halftime ceremony for Saturday's game against the Sacramento Kings. And he's the first ever Toronto Raptor to ever get his jersey retired. This is the first player in the entire franchise's history that has ever gotten their jersey retired, and very, very well deserved. I mean, he essentially, from what I know of him, because again, he's played a very long career. Like, he's one of the very few players that has played in 4 decades in the NBA, and in fact, he might be one of the only players that has played in 4 decades in the NBA. We're gonna have to see if LeBron can stay in the league up until 2030. But aside from that, he's had a very, very long career. And from what I know, he was sort of the big reason and putting Toronto Raptors and the franchise on the map. And, aside from Kawhi Leonard winning their first and only championship with the franchise, this is one of the players who I feel like deserves the jersey retirement for the Raptors, and he definitely deserves to be the first. I mean, I expected it to happen a little bit like a while ago. I didn't expect it to happen like, now. I feel like now was like, I'm better late than never is really what I'm trying to say. But like Vince Carter, he was a fantastic player on the Raptors. He ended up he was obviously, very happy with the whole situation, and being one of the first players to ever get his jersey retired. When the jersey goes up shortly, it's not just Carter 15 going up, it's all of us going up, Carter told his fans. The memories that have been created for 6 years, however you view it, go up tonight. I hope and pray we enjoy our jersey going up together forever. And he stepped onto the court. The home fans gave Carter a huge ovation, immediately bringing tears to Vince Carter's eyes. And he clenched his fists and he let out a primal scream in response to that reception. Like, he was incredibly emotional during this jersey retirement. Shortly after, a video played on the screen hanging above the court and included messages from DeMar, who currently plays for the Kings, Kyle Lowry, Scotty Barnes, Tristan Thompson, Steph Curry, and Glenn Grunwald, the executive who acquired Carter for the Raptors in the 1998 NBA draft. That's who Glenn Grunwald was. And Carter's ex-Raptors teammates, Charles Oakley, Doug Christie, Jerome Williams, Dee Brown, Kevin Willis, Muggsy Bogues, Antonio Davis, Alvin Williams, Morris Peterson, and T-Mac were in attendance. Raptors global brand ambassador Drake was also in the arena for the first time in 5 Raptors home games. Carter's wife, 2 daughters, son, mother, and stepfather, among other family members, also watched the ceremony from the floor. I have a feeling that one of those people in the stands and one of those people that I just mentioned, let's just say they not like us. But aside from that, while Carter's career lasted a league record 22 seasons and featured several high points after his departure from Toronto, his time in Canada produced the most memorable moments, including what is considered to be one of the best performances in the league's slam dunk contest at All-Star Weekend back in 2000, so before I was even born. And a lot of people, they consider Vince Carter to be the best dunker in the history of basketball. And that really says a lot, because there are a lot of high flyers in the NBA, in not just right now, but history. And even you can make an argument that there were even more high flyers back then than when Vince Carter played than there are now. And the fact that back then he was considered to be the best and still is considered to be the best dunker really, really says a lot about him. I mean, his vertical was insane. He jumped over a 7-footer in the Olympics just to get the dunk off, and that was probably one of the, unlike John Morant, who almost dunks the ball most of the time, this guy finishes his dunks almost every single time. It's amazing what this man was able to do. That's why he's called half man, half amazing. And even with players like Michael Jordan, Dominique Wilkins, LeBron James, Zion, not even Zion, excuse me, that's my fantasy talking, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and other dunkers, some other really cool dunkers. I need to think. Clyde Drexler, those kind of players, like a lot of people would consider to be some of the best dunkers that the league has ever seen, and Vince Carter still holds the reins as the best dunker in the history of the NBA. That really does say a lot when you can best Michael Jordan as being the best in a specific category that Michael Jordan excelled at. Like, for people to admit that he was the best dunker over somebody like Michael Jordan, who, might I remind you, dunked from the free throw line, really says a lot. And even like Aaron Gordon, who is arguably this league and this generation's best dunker, unfortunately he did not win a dunk contest. I think that was that dunk contest, like, that was incredibly unfair. There was at one point where Aaron Gordon like literally scored like 4 straight 50-point dunks. The voters in there were like incredibly generous apparently, and he still didn't end up winning, which is absolutely absurd. He dunked over Taco Fall as well and still couldn't end up winning, which does not make any sense, which ultimately led to him retiring from the dunk contest because he just feels that is completely unfair. But aside from that, as a Raptor, Vince Carter ended up winning Rookie of the Year in a lockout-shortened season in 1998 and 1999, that NBA season, and he was named an All-Star 5 times as a Toronto Raptor. He received the most votes from the fans for the event multiple times. Carter played 403 regular season games with 15 playoff games for the Raptors, leading them to the Eastern Conference semifinals in 2001, the furthest the team had advanced in the playoffs until 2016, and then all the way up until 2019 when they ultimately won the finals. Vince Carter's time in Toronto was a little bit complicated, which is why some people were still reluctant to give him the jersey retirement, because while it was, in a broad stance, pretty solid, it ended in a rather unfortunate manner. Now, I talked about this before, but in the final years with Vince Carter on the Raptors, he wanted out, and the team was reluctant to trade him. So Vince Carter, essentially what he did was he decided to force his hand. He ultimately did not play to the best of his ability in his final year with the Toronto Raptors, and that encouraged the Raptors to essentially trade him over to New Jersey. The second he stepped foot on New Jersey and the second he played for the Nets, it was as if nothing happened, and he was back to the same half-man, half-amazing player that he was. I mean, a lot of Toronto fans at that point, they did not really like him. I mean, and who can you really blame them? He essentially forced his hand to get out of the team by playing bad, which, you know, is, I don't know how to explain it, but that's like really, that's just not cool, honestly. Like, that's really the best way that I could put it. And Carter's final 3+ seasons in Toronto were defined by injuries and disappointment, eventually leading to a trade to the New Jersey Nets in December. Shortly after the trade, Carter told TNT that he didn't always push himself as hard as he should have when he was in Toronto, and he was booed vigorously for nearly a decade before those boos turned into cheers as the club recognized him during his return with the Memphis Grizzlies during Toronto's 20th season. This is the Raptors' 30th season. So to be honest with you, this is what I wanted more than anything, Carter said of his formal reconnection with his first NBA team at the introduction of the refurbished court named after him last month. So, excuse me, this is sort of the respect, the undue respect that he feels like he deserved. That sort of explains, you know, the primal scream in his retirement, because he finally earned the respect from the fans that he felt close with. So that's all that I really got to say about this second segment and the jersey retirement. So now we're going to go ahead and go into a break, and then afterwards we're going to talk about the NBA games that went down on Friday, because there were a lot of them, as well as the games that ended up happening over the weekend. But that's going to be in the fourth segment, because I don't think we'll have enough time to fit all of that in one segment. So I'll be right back after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, we are going to be doing a recap of the games that went down on Friday. Specifically the games on Friday. And then in the next segment, we'll recap the rest of the games that went down over the weekend. And there were a lot of games that happened on Friday, which is why I decided to save it just for one segment, as opposed to cramming it all, like the entire weekend, in just one segment. So let's go ahead and dive right in. So at first, we start off with the Knicks against the Pistons. I thought the Knicks were going to end up prevailing in this matchup, and of course they did. It's against the Pistons, so again, it's like not really saying all that much, but still, this was a very, very good win for the Knicks. And I mean, the starting lineup played absolutely phenomenal. And again, every starter in this lineup ended up scoring in double figures, which is really, really good. This is what they need in order to combat against the Boston Celtics, who are no doubt going to try to go for a back-to-back. And Josh Hart, he ended with 13 points. Mikal Bridges ended with 15 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists. Doesn't really seem like... I mean, it seems like he sort of found his shot, in this season. 6 for 13, along with 3 for 6 from 3. So, again, very, very solid. Jalen Brunson had 36 points in this matchup. Finally, we get a 30-point game from Brunson. 5 assists, along with 2 steals. Karl Anthony Towns, he ended with a double-double, 21 points, along with 11 rebounds and 7 assists. Very solid performance coming in from Cat. And, 8 for 18 from the field. Maybe should tighten up the efficiency, but 3 for 6 from 3, that's more than enough to ask for, especially from a center in this NBA. Now, who else? OG Anunoby, 21 points, 6 assists, 2 steals, along with 4 rebounds. He was mainly acquired because of his production on the defensive side, but if he's producing like this consistently on the offensive side, this is really, really good. He's averaging only 13 points per game, which, it's rather solid. Like, again, as a primary defender, like a player that really specializes on defense, averaging 13 points, I think, is rather solid. And maybe towards the end of the season, he can average a little bit more. But so far, this is a very solid performance coming in from OG. And Miles McBride ended the game with 10 points, 4 for 12 from the field, 2 for 8. Not very good production, but again, didn't really need that. Now, Cade Cunningham, once again the leading scorer, and once again ended up losing in this matchup. 10 for 19 from the field with 22 points. Tobias Harris ended 5 for 8 from the field with 13 points. But aside from that, and two other players for the Detroit Pistons, Simone Fontecchio, forgive me if I mess up that last name, 12 points, and Jaden Ivey, 10 points on 4 for 9 from the field. The rest of the team just wasn't there, and that's sort of what we expect from the Pistons. So, next game. The Nets, they ended up beating the Chicago Bulls. I'm pretty sure I ended up picking the Bulls to win in this matchup, but Cam Thomas had some other things to say about that. He hit an incredibly clutch dagger three-pointer from the logo, which I really cannot believe that. And again, he ended the game with 32 points, 11 for 23 from the field, 4 for 11 from 3. And really solid performance coming in from Cam. I expected him to play really well. And the rest of the starters, they played efficient, but they didn't really produce enough points. And by efficient, I mean Claxton 6 for 8 with 12 points. Keon Johnson 5 for 6 with 12 points, and Cam Johnson 5 for 11 with 14 points. So again, efficient but productive, not necessarily. And the rest of the team, they shot 52% from the field, as a team, and 30% from three. That 30% from three was a little bit worse than the Chicago Bulls going 17 for 44 for 38%. But again, this was just a masterclass from Cam Thomas. Nikola Vucevic also had a masterclass performance, 28 points, 10 for 11 from the field, only missed one three-pointer, and ended with 11 rebounds, a very solid double-double, but it wasn't enough to go up against the Brooklyn Nets, surprising as that may seem. Zach LaVine, he ended the game with 21 points, 7 for 17 from the field. When is he going to get traded? That's really the big question that I've got. Kobe White ended with 21 points, 6 for 13, and Josh Giddey ended 5 for 17 with 11 points. And also recorded 8 assists and 6 rebounds along with that as well. So that's a game that I ended up getting wrong. The Lakers, they ended up beating the Raptors, and that was an outcome that I completely expected. LeBron and Anthony Davis completely dominated in this matchup as we expected. LeBronto, that's one of his nicknames. I mean, LeBron is just he might as well be an owner for the Toronto Raptors at this point. He is just that guy. He ended the game with 27 points, 10 assists, along with 6 rebounds, and he also ended up shooting 9 for 17 from the field and 5 for 8 from 3. That is LeBron. He also becomes the oldest player in league history to record 25 plus points, 10 plus assists, and 0 turnovers in a game. Of course, he breaks a record in this matchup. Anything that he does and any sort of incredible stat that he records is going to end up breaking records. And Anthony Davis, he ended the game with an astounding 38 points and 11 rebounds, along with 3 steals and 2 blocks. 14 for 20 from the field. He is not taking as many three-point shots as I really expected him to, but the fact that this is working with him not taking three-point shots, I think it speaks volume and it speaks magnitude to the incredible value that he brings. Now, the Lakers, as a team, they shot 34% from 3, but again, they are winning games. Austin Reeves went 0 for 6 from 3, 4 for 13, but he ended with 20 points. The free throw line was very, very, the points at the line for the Raptors compared to the points at the line for the Lakers was astounding. The Raptors only took 13 free throws compared to the Lakers taking 41 free throws. Combine that with the fact that the Raptors were 10 for 35 from the field and the Lakers were 11 for 32. Excuse me. That's really just, an accident waiting to happen. Roy Hachimura did not really play well in this matchup, but he didn't really need to when LeBron and Anthony Davis were doing their thing. And D'Angelo Russell played pretty solid in this matchup too. 7 for 13, 3 of 6 from 3, and 19 points to show for that as well, and along with 6 assists. So again, this is an outcome that I completely expected coming in from the Lakers. Celtics, they easily beat the Hornets 124-109. I'm not really going to talk about this that much because they're the Celtics. This is expected of them. Jason Tatum ended with 32 points and 11 rebounds, along with 3 steals to go with that, shooting 9 for 19 from the field. Jaylen Brown ended up going 8 for 19 from the field, but he ended the game with 25 points. Derek White ended with 17, and Drew Holiday ended with 14. I mean, this team is just a unit. LaMelo Ball is playing phenomenally. He ended the game with 31 points in this matchup. He didn't really shoot that efficiently, but again, 31 points is 31 points. And Trey Mann, he ended the game with 23 points, 10 of 18 from the field. And Miles Bridges ended 5 for 16 with 14 points. And again, not going to really say much about this game. The Cavs, they ended up beating the Orlando Magic as I expected them to. And the Magic, they're sort of in a really tight spot, especially with the absence of Paolo Banchero. And without him, it's really unclear exactly what is going to happen with the Orlando Magic and where their season is going to end up taking them. Jalen Suggs, he ended with 28 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists. And for the Cavs side, Garland ended with 25 points. Donovan Mitchell ended with 22 points. The Cavs still remain flawless. More on that later. And just speeding through the rest of these because we are a little bit low on time. The Kings, they ended up beating the Hawks. I think I picked the Hawks to win in this matchup. I'm not entirely sure. This game would have been rather close. I think I picked the Hawks. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if I picked the Kings. DeRozan ended the game with 27 points. De'Aaron Fox ended with 31 points. And they also were able to record 7+ rebounds in that. Sabonis ended with another double-double, but he also ended up fouling out in this matchup. Now, on the Hawks side, Trae Young ended with 25 points along with 12 assists and 5 rebounds. He did shoot 8 for 21 from the field, though, which is not that efficient. But again, that's sort of what we expect coming in from Trae Young. The Pelicans, they ended up beating the Pacers at home in this matchup. I don't think I picked the Pelicans to win. I think I picked the Pacers. And, of course, the Pacers, they let me down. Halliburton, 11 points, 11 assists. He ended the game shooting 2 of 8 from the field. Ben Shepherd, he ended with 20 points, 7 of 12. And Benedict Mathurin ended with 19 points, 7 for 15. Zion ended with a 34-point double-double, 34 points, 10 assists, was 4 rebounds away from a triple-double. Brandon Ingram ended with 26 points. Jordan Hawkins ended with 23 points. And that was essentially all of the scoring coming in from the Pelicans in their starting roster. Next, the Timberwolves ended up beating the Denver Nuggets in an incredibly close game. Aaron Gordon ended with 31 points along with 11 rebounds. Jokic ended with 26 points, 13 assists, and 9 rebounds. 1 rebound off of a triple-double. Michael Porter Jr. ended with 26 points as well, but it wasn't enough against the Minnesota Timberwolves, who had Anthony Edwards score 29 points, Julius Randle score 23, Rudy Gobert end with a double-double, 17 and 14, and that was essentially all that she wrote. They did shoot 42% from 3 compared to the Nuggets, who shot 34% from 3, which again is not ideal, but the Nuggets only ended up winning by 3 points, so the game was still rather close. They just needed more production from everyone else. And of course, OKC ended up beating the Trailblazers easily. The final score was 137-114. Did not expect the Portland Trailblazers to even have a chance in this matchup. SGA dropped 30 points, 7 rebounds, along with 6 assists. Jalen Williams ended with 22 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists. And Chet Holmgren only played 18 minutes in this matchup, and he ended the game with just 6 points, 1 for 3 from the field. So that's all there is to talk about with the Friday games. So now we're going to go ahead and move on to the weekend games, or the games that happened on Saturday. And I'll be right back after this short break, Saturday and Sunday, excuse me. Be sure to stay tuned for that.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back with the fourth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fourth segment, we are going to be looking at the games that went down over the weekend, and we are going to be talking about all of them. And yeah, that's essentially what we're going to be doing. So the Warriors, they ended up playing the Houston Rockets. This game went into overtime, and the Warriors, they ended up winning. They're 5-1 right now, and they still don't have Steph Curry. I actually found out Steph Curry had an ankle injury earlier, and he's sidelined. That's the reason why he's not playing in some of these games. Of course, it's always the ankle. I don't understand. Like, it's really bad luck that Curry has with those ankles. But regardless, the team ended up winning, and they won 127-121 against Houston. Draymond Green ended with a double-double, 14 points, 11 rebounds. Andrew Wiggins ended with 15 points. And coming off the bench, that was really where all the scoring came from. Buddy Hield ended the game with 27 points and 7 rebounds, effectively replacing Klay Thompson as the shooter for the team. And Jonathan Kuminga, after being benched, ended up telling everybody why he doesn't deserve to be benched, dropping 23 points, 7 for 12, 2 for 3 from 3, And again, just an overall dominant performance coming in from both of those guys coming off the bench. On Houston's side, Jabari Smith Jr. ended with 21 points and 7 rebounds. Sengun ended with a double-double, 14 points and 10 rebounds. However, his efficiency, he did shoot 50%, 5 for 10. I do expect a little bit more production coming in from him, but that's besides the point. Coming off the bench again, Tari Eason for the Houston Rockets ended with 27 points and 9 rebounds. And Amen Thompson, he ended with 18 points and 11 rebounds along with 4 assists. So pretty solid production coming in from all of those guys. Fred VanVleet and Jalen Green did not have a very solid game here tonight, though. Fred VanVleet went 2 for 12, and Jalen Green ended up going 2 for 13, which is not ideal if you want to win a game for Houston. But the fact that this game still went into overtime, it says a little bit about Houston because, I mean, yeah, they forced an overtime, but then again, this is a team without Steph Curry, and you're losing to that. So not really ideal for the Houston Rockets, and I'm not really sure exactly what that spells for them, if that makes sense. Now, excuse me. The next game on this list is, again, the Celtics going up against the Hornets. They played them in back-to-back games, and they played them at home in back-to-back games. But the result was still the same. They ended up winning 113-103. Jason Tatum ended up dropping 29 points. Jaylen Brown did not seem to play in this matchup. No, he did not. But they still won rather comfortably by double digits. Peyton Picard was more than enough to fill in that void. 22 points, 8 for 15 from the field, 6 of 12 from 3. Luke Cornett shot perfectly from the field in every single aspect, made all of his shots, and made all of his free throws for 19 points. Derek White went 5 for 17, 4 for 13 from 3. Not necessarily ideal, but he did end with 18 points, which again is solid. Again, the efficiency is not all that, but still rather solid. LaMelo Ball again had another fantastic game. A little bit inefficient, 15 for 26, of course, but 6 for 12 from 3, and along with 36 points is more than enough if you ask me. And a lot of you people, I'm telling you, this guy I think is better than Anthony Edwards. I'm just saying that now, but he's looking like he is. But that's just the beginning of the season, so we'll see how it unfolds later on. But that's really all that I got to cover about that game. I mean, we all know the Celtics, and we all know the Hornets. Now, as I mentioned before in the first segment, the Grizzlies, they ended up beating the 76ers 124-107. Joel Embiid did not play in this matchup. We have no idea if he's going to play in any other matchup now that I think about it. Ja Morant ended the game with 18 points, 12 assists. One thing I should point out about Ja Morant, he's played 6 games already, and he's only attempted 1 dunk, which goes to show that he's trying to adapt his game so that way he doesn't end up being injury prone like a certain other point guard that used to play for the Chicago Bulls. I'm sure all of you guys can connect the dots there. And Jaren Jackson Jr. ended the game with 27 points, 6 rebounds. Zach Edey ended with a double-double, 10 points and 10 rebounds along with that. And overall, the team played very solid. I mean, what do you expect from the 76ers when they only have Tyrese Maxey on the team? Paul George still hasn't made his debut, neither has Joel Embiid. It's not really looking good for the 76ers right now. Speaking of not looking good, the Cavs, they ended up beating the Bucks. So the Bucks are obviously the team that is not looking good in the slightest. And right now the Bucks, they're 1-5 in this season, which is one of the worst teams in the entire Eastern Conference. After winning 1 game, they ended up laying an egg in the rest of the 4. Now, Baron Davis, he said it best. Any team that is coached by Doc Rivers is a beatable team. Doesn't matter the talent, they are a beatable team, and this is proving that. Anthony Manzano's in the chat saying, I think the NBA is just going to give Philadelphia a slap on the wrist. I don't think they're going to take away draft picks or fine them. It comes to this investigation about the injury to Joel Embiid. This investigation has nothing to do with Joel Embiid regarding his injury. That investigation has already concluded. And I do understand that they essentially gave the 76ers organization a slap on the wrist. But this is something completely different. I mean, he allegedly pushed a reporter, which has never been done before. I don't think the NBA is going to take that lightly when you're literally an NBA player and you're shoving a reporter. allegedly shoving a reporter. I don't think that's a matter that can be taken lightly, but that's just me. Again, we'll see how this ends up going. Now, the Bucks, they ended up losing on a Donovan Mitchell game-winning buzzer beater. He ended the game with 30 points. Darius Garland ended with a double-double, 11 and 10. Jared Allen ended with, as well as a double-double, 15 and 12. And get this, the Milwaukee Bucks, Giannis, ended up scoring 34 points, 16 rebounds, 9 assists. Damian Lillard ended with 41 points and 9 assists. And they lost. This is just unprecedented. This is unbelievable. It just does not make any sense. Damian Lillard made 10 3-pointers. He single-handedly made more 3-pointers than the rest of the Bucks as a team. There is no reason why this team should be losing. And also, Gary Trent, I have no idea why he's playing so bad on this team. He's 1 of 10 from the field and ended the game with 1 for 7 from the 3 with only 3 points to show for it. If he would have hit a couple more threes, they would have had this game in the bag, no doubt. But again, this is Doc Rivers and his team. This always happens, and I don't understand how it's possible. You have Giannis and Damian Lillard dropping 30-plus points, and you're still losing. It's a really bad situation going on in Milwaukee. Next, the Raptors, they ended up beating the Kings in overtime. The Kings, they had De'Aaron Fox, 24 points. DeMar DeRozan, he ended with 33 points. Sabonis ended with a triple-double. Get this stat line. 17 points, 20 rebounds, and 10 assists, which is incredible, and they still lost. Keegan Murray even ended with a double-double, 16 points and 10 rebounds to go along with that, and they still lost. RJ Barrett had a phenomenal game, 31 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists. Grady Dick ended with 22 points, and Ochai Agbaji, forgive me if I messed up that last name, 22 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals. And off of the bench, Chris Boucher, 24 points, 5 rebounds, and 1 assist to go along with that as well. So, pretty solid performance coming in from the Raptors. And again, a pretty solid performance coming in from the Kings. It's just the game ultimately ended up going down to the wire. Now, the Spurs, they ended up surprising me by beating the Timberwolves the other night. Victor, he's a phenomenal athlete. We all know this. But Victor Wembanyama did not really have a career game. This was sort of everyone else doing most of their work. Spurs ended up winning 113-103. Let's see. Keldon Johnson ended with 25 points. Jeremy Sochan, he ended with 19 points, 7 for 10 from the field. Victor, 17 points, 7 for 15, but 1 for 7 from 3. Again, I think Victor should maybe tone down the 3-point shots just a little bit and try to work in the mid-range area. That's just me personally. Maybe, I don't know. I really don't feel like he should be taking that many shots, at least from 3. But that's just me, given his height. And I'm all for shooting 3-pointers, but as of right now, it doesn't really seem to be working that well for Victor. So I think moving a little bit closer to the mid-range area is more ideal. Chris Paul, he ended the game with 15 points, 13 assists. Of course, Chris Paul did that. He's Chris Paul. And that's really all of the performances coming in from the Spurs. Anthony Edwards ended with 21 points. Julius Randle also ended with 21 points. But when the rest of the lineup is a little bit lackluster in terms of scoring, you're not really going to win, despite the fact that it was the Spurs. The Spurs just had a much better night, especially shooting the ball. They shot 31% from 3 compared to the Timberwolves shooting 29% from 3. And, they ended up winning by double digits. They were just shooting a lot better from the field as well. They shot a better percentage at them in practically every single aspect. DiVincenzo, he ended up having 5 for 7, 14 points in this game. And again, aside from Julius Randle and Anthony Edwards, there wasn't really much offensive production coming in from the rest of the lineup on the Timberwolves. So they're going to have to fix some of that over this season if they want to hope to even contend. The Heat, they ended up beating the Wizards easily. I expected this outcome. They won 118-98. Not really going to talk about this all this much just because we are out of time. Aside from the fact that Bam Adebayo ended with 32 points and 14 rebounds and basically led this team to the win. The Suns, they ended up beating the Trailblazers. Again, another game that I'm not really going to talk about because the Suns, they are just a much better, much more talented team than the Trailblazers. Devin Booker ended with 28 points, 9 rebounds, 9 assists. KD ended with 21, and Bradley Beal ended with 15. The Blazers, they had 2 players score 20 points, but again, it wasn't enough. The rest of the lineup just could not handle it. The Nuggets, they ended up beating the Jazz. Of course, they ended up beating the Jazz. The Jazz are the only team in the NBA to have yet to win a game. And it's not really looking good. Walter Kessler, he ended with 18 points and 14 rebounds. The Denver Nuggets, for Jokic, he ended with 27 points, 16 rebounds, and 9 assists. Again, one stat away from a triple-double once again. And Michael Porter Jr., he ended with 20 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists. And next game and the final game, the Thunder, they continue going flawless, 6-0 so far in this season. And they ended up beating the Clippers. SGA ended up scoring 25 points, got 9 assists and 3 rebounds along with that. Chet Holmgren, he ended with 10 points, but he did record 14 rebounds along with that. He shot 3 for 9 from the field, which is not very efficient. But again, when you are putting up 10 and 14, that is more than solid, especially on a team that has SGA at the helm. James Harden did not really play well despite having a double-double, 12 points, 13 rebounds. He did shoot 4 for 13 from the field, however. Norman Powell was the leading scorer for the Clippers yet again, 24 points, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals. And that was basically all in terms of production for the Clippers. And that's it for the 4th segment and for this recap. Actually, no, I lied. There's a whole other set of games that I completely forgot to talk about. So the Pistons, they ended up beating the Nets 106-92, an outcome that I completely did not expect. I'm going to speed run through this just because we are a little bit low on time. Mavericks, they ended up beating the Orlando Magic 108-85. Of course, they don't have Paolo Banchero. Luka Doncic, he ended with 32 points, 9 rebounds, and 7 assists. And on the Orlando Magic, there was nowhere near enough offensive production for them to even be considered effective. Then the Hawks, they ended up beating the Pelicans in this matchup. They got a 23-12 game from Trae Young. Of course they did. He's so efficient at doing that. And Jalen Johnson, 29 points, 12 for 20 from the field. On the Pelicans side, Brandon Ingram was the leading scorer, 32 points, but there was no Zion in this matchup. So that was pretty much all she wrote. And with Jordan Hawkins being the next leading scorer with only 19 points, it's not ideal for the Pelicans if you want to win. So that's all that I have on the recap. So now we're going to go ahead and go into the 5th and the final segment where we look at the NBA power rankings that were just revealed an hour ago, actually, maybe 2 hours ago. So we'll be right back after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned. And we are back with the 5th and the final segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this final segment, we are going to be looking at the power rankings for the NBA this coming week. Again, this was revealed this was published at 10:27 in the morning. So, just doing a little bit of a review on what the standings look like and what the power rankings look like. And we're going to go right ahead. I have not looked at this yet. And let me just set up the page right here. All right, there we go. So you guys can see my screen. I can see it, so I hope you guys can see it. It should work. So at number 1, we have OKC, which isn't bad. I don't think that's bad whatsoever. And OKC, they are a incredible team. They're one of the only teams they're the only team in the conference that's 6-0, and they're one of two teams that have yet to lose a game. So putting them at number 1, I don't think that's really a bad thing. I know I said that the Celtics, they stay at number 1 until proven otherwise, and I will say that the Celtics, they ended up dropping a game against the Pacers, and that game that they ended up dropping, I know it was an overtime loss, and the game was really, really close up until the very end, which, it's all right to lose when it's like that close. Again, it's never all right to lose. I should amend that statement. It's different when you lose in overtime off of one shot compared to if you just flat out lose in a game. Like, the implication is rather different. So I don't really see this as a bad thing, moving the Thunder all the way up and, keeping the Boston Celtics out of number 1. I don't really see that as a bad thing, especially considering the competition that the Oklahoma City Thunder have had to face in regards with their schedule. So next is Cleveland. Now, I understand giving respect to the teams that have yet to lose a game. I have nothing wrong with that. But I will say that I don't think that Cleveland is a team that should be ranked higher than the Boston Celtics. I have full confidence that if the Celtics and the Cavs match up in a series, again, then the Celtics are easily going to beat them. Maybe not easily, but they're going to end up winning in the series, which is why I don't think they should be ranked this high. However, I will say that early on, while their competition wasn't all that impressive, they still faced rather, I guess you could say, worthy adversaries, right? And let me just go ahead and go through this schedule real quick, right? So they played the Raptors in their first game, right? It's not a big deal. They played the Pistons in their next game, and then the Wizards in the game after that. Again, not a really big deal because those teams are, less than mediocre. But then they went and they beat the Knicks. Then they went on and beat the Lakers. Then they beat the Orlando Magic, albeit without Paolo Banchero. And then they ended up beating the Bucks on a game-winning shot from Donovan Mitchell. So moving them up to 2, maybe not necessarily, but again, I totally understand why the only 2 flawless teams in the NBA are ranked 1 and 2, and I respect this list for that. So I assume afterwards it's Boston. Yep. Boston drops all the way from 1 down to 3. Again, if it were me, I would have put the Boston Celtics all the way up here, at number 2, just because, I feel like the Celtics would beat the Cavs in this series. But that's not really trying to disrespect the Cavs and what they've been able to do in the season. But as of right now with the Celtics, given the fact that they're 6-1, there's really not much that needs to be said aside from the fact that they ultimately dropped a game, and that's why they ended up moving down in the rankings. So not a big deal, not really much that needs to be said. The Phoenix Suns, they move all the way up from number 7 to number 4. I don't think that's going to be the ranking that they're going to maintain throughout the rest of the season, but they split the first 2 games in LA, and then they ended up winning 4 straight, and they're one of 5 teams with fewer than 2 losses, which makes sense, why they're ranked at number 4. Let me see what team is ranked below them. Okay. This is where I start losing it, because again, the Golden State Warriors, they refuse to go away. They genuinely refuse to go away, and I can't stand it. But that is a completely different argument. What they've been doing and how they've been winning these games, not to mention winning some of these games without Steph Curry, it is rather impressive, but I do have to nitpick a little bit, and I do have to say that I do not think that the competition that the Warriors have faced is, enough to warrant this sort of response, I guess you could say, right? I don't think that the teams that they beat are competent enough to put them in this high of the rankings. Now, in the top 10, yes, you can make the argument, but at number 5, I don't necessarily think so. Now, the first game that they played was against Portland. They easily won that. Portland is bad. Then they played the Jazz. The Jazz are bad. They ended up losing to the Clippers, which I have no idea my opinion on the Clippers yet. I still need a verdict on exactly what's happening there and what to expect. Then they beat the Pelicans in back-to-back games at home. I originally thought the Pelicans were going to end up beating them at least in one of those games, but that didn't happen, albeit without Steph Curry, which is really the more impressive thing. But the Pelicans, they also weren't entirely healthy either, so I guess that evens out. And then they ended up beating the Houston Rockets recently. So these games and these wins, while it is impressive that they're winning without Steph and Curry, these teams are more often than not less than mediocre. Again, more often than not. I'm not saying that every single one of them was less than mediocre, but I think the fact that they did not have Steph Curry and they're 3-0 without Steph really says a lot about this team and the position and where they're at. But that might be like the ultimate boost in the ratings and why they're ranked so high. And let me see, the team below that, the Knicks. I don't agree with that. I think the Knicks should be ranked a little bit higher than the Warriors. And you could call that bias, you can call that whatever you want. You can call that being me being a fan of New York. But really, I feel like the Knicks, they're having a new team, and the losses that they've had in this season, they've come against incredibly competent teams. I mean, they lost to the Celtics, all right? That's what many consider to be the best team in the entire Eastern Conference. And then they lost to the Cavs, another team that is in the top of the Eastern Conference right now. So their only losses in this season have come to the absolute top of the food chain in the Eastern Conference. And on top of that, they were still trying to figure out, how to work as a team, having acquired Karl Anthony Towns and also having acquired Mikal Bridges. So those two losses, they're against teams that have been at the top of the Eastern Conference for a while, as well as played as a team for much longer than the Knicks roster has as a team. So it makes sense why they ended up losing in those matchups. I don't think they should get penalized that much, and they should be in number 5. That's my opinion. And they ultimately ended up completely outmatching the Pacers in one of their matchups. They also outmatched the Heat in one of their matchups. And then the other one, they ended up outmatching the Pistons. The Pistons, we're not even going to count that game because they're the Pistons. The other two wins against the Pacers and the Heat, again, two formidable teams that have played, longer than this roster has played together. And they still came out with the win in both of those matchups. I think that really says a lot for where this team is at. And again, this is only the beginning of the season. The chemistry is only going to get better as the season progresses. So that's my reasoning for why I would move these guys all the way up to number 5 and move Golden State down. Now, Dallas Mavericks, they're ranked at number 7. They move up from being ranked at number 8. It's not really, their defense is very, very good. It's a little bit too early to tell whether or not their defense, you could look at their defensive rating right now. It's not easy to tell whether or not their defense is going to stay like this, but, considering that their offense is only ranked 17th, that's not ideal, but this is Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving we're talking about. Eventually, these guys are going to have their games and they're going to get the ball rolling. And the fact that they ultimately ended up beating the Magic in a blowout win should definitely increase their rankings, regardless of the fact that Paolo is not playing in this matchup. Luka, again, he ended with 32 points, 9 rebounds, 7 assists. With Kyrie, he only ended with 17 points, but again, when Luka is scoring 30, does it really matter? It really kind of doesn't, right? Because Luka Doncic is going to give you that offensive production. And Kyrie, he was still pretty solid from the field, 5 for 11. Again, just solid. Klay Thompson, a little less than solid, 4 for 10 from the field and 1 of 5 from 3. If they can get solid production coming in from Klay Thompson, then this team could be a little bit dangerous moving forward. Next, the Lakers, they drop all the way from number 3 all the way down to number 8. Still rather respectable. Again, number 8, Kobe Bryant. Rest in peace. They do play the Pistons in this coming matchup today. I expect them to win against the Pistons, obviously, because they're the Pistons. And their offense is very, very solid. You can see them. They're ranked number 5th on offense. Their starters are... I saw a stat saying that the Lakers starters have the second best scoring in the entire NBA. However, their defense is really, really, really lackluster. You can see it right here in their defensive rating being ranked number 27. And a team that has very little defense is a team that's beatable in the postseason. And that might haunt them a little bit later on, but as of right now, they're 4-2. Again, really solid. They just have to win out the rest of this week, and then they'll most likely move up all the way a little bit higher in the rankings. Next, Minnesota. I feel like Minnesota should be ranked a little bit lower than 9. They're 3-3 as a team, and they were 6 last week, but now they moved all the way down to 9. And they got a couple of big wins. They ended up losing to the Mavericks and losing to the Spurs. And they also they did beat the Nuggets, which was really solid and really good work from them. But again, losing to the Spurs, incredibly less than ideal, which is why I think that they should be moved a little bit lower. And maybe not lower than Denver now that I think about it, considering that Denver has not moved from their number 10 spot. I really don't know what it's going to take for the Denver Nuggets to move out of the top 10, but I don't think they belong in there. Memphis, you could make an argument, deserves to be in the top 10. Miami Heat, another team you can make an argument that deserves to be in the top 10. And the Kings recently, the Kings, they really started out rather poorly for the season, starting out 0-2, but then they ended up going 3-1 after that, which is not bad at all. It seems like they found their footing. And let's see, the Orlando Magic, they're probably going to drop all the way down from number 14, maybe even down to the 20s eventually if they keep on losing. Pacers ranked at number 15 is, it's respectable. I totally agree with it. Houston moving up from 22 all the way up to 16. Again, another respectable thing. And the Clippers moving up from number 17. They moved down from 9 to 17. Again, that is another very respectable thing. And, I feel like these rankings, they really make sense as of right now so far and given what's been unfolding. And let's see. I just want to see where the Bucks are. Because that's really, the more important thing. Okay. All right. That makes a lot of sense. I don't think the Bucks should be ranked worse than the Detroit Pistons, but, they do have a much worse record than the Pistons, and they did lose in embarrassing fashion. And like Baron Davis said, a team with Doc Rivers is a beatable team. And the 76ers, they move all the way down again. They might end up being one of the worst teams in the entire Eastern Conference if Joel Embiid gets suspended for a very long time, but we'll see exactly what happens. But so far, these rankings, all of them, and Utah being the worst team in the NBA, all of it is rather respectable, and I don't really have much of a problem with these rankings at all. And really, the only thing that I would really want to change is Golden State's ranking. I would move them down a little bit, and maybe fiddle with Denver and move them down a little bit as well, along with moving the Minnesota Timberwolves as well. Because I feel like that some of these teams, they could end up beating them. I feel like some of these teams, they could end up beating them. And I think Minnesota and the Denver Nuggets, they are rather evenly matched given the matchup that they played against each other recently. But hindsight is 20/20, so we'll see what this week does and what unfolds. So, excuse me. But that's all that I have on this segment, and that's it for the show. Thank you so much for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. As usual, we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, whether you guys have a hot take, burning question, anything you've been dying to share. We're all ears. If you really want your comment or question to get noticed, then I recommend using Super Chat. You just click on the $sign below the chat box, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. They really help the show. If Super Chat's not really your thing, that's totally fine. You could always use the link displayed below the ticker on every show segment as well. You can use gsmcpodcast.net to send in your comments and or donations that way. That's all that I have to say in regards to the podcast and for the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm your host, Nelson. I'll see you guys on Wednesday, and as always, take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day.